Hello all, and welcome to ManageEngine Mobile Device Manager Plus training. My name is Naveen, and I would be your trainer for today. And this would be our training schedule. Today, we would be talking about onboarding and device provisioning. Next week and the week after, we would be dealing with app management device security and modern management of Windows 10 and Mac machines, respectively. So let's take a quick look at the training agenda for today. First, we would have an overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product, a general introduction of what MDM is, what would be the general architecture that we'd use, the ports, and how we would manage the devices if they are onboarded to your solution itself. Then we would talk about how you can enroll the devices. Devices that are already in use, devices that you guys might have purchased for your company, fresh devices in which case. So all these enrollment types, we'd be discussing about them today. We would also work on few options like configurations that can be deployed to your devices and how you can containerize your corporate data. Because containerization is key from what I have seen in the past 3 years that I have been working here. Everyone wants to containerize their data so that no corporate data gets leaked to any other third-party application. So we'll be discussing more about that today. And we would also be discussing how you can restrict unauthorized access to your corporate Exchange accounts. So we talk more about that because most of you would be using Exchange Online or Exchange Active Sync. So we would discuss how you can protect your email services as well. So since I come from a support background and I've talked to a lot of customers, I've handpicked a few scenarios and solutions as well that you might come across in your day-to-day environment itself. So first off would be the overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product. So as MDM, we support all the major operating systems. It can be your Apple, your Android, your Windows, or your Chromebooks as well. And when it comes to your Windows and Apple, we support Mac machines as well as your Windows 10. So that would be the third session that we'd be conducting 2 weeks from today. And we'd be talking more about how you can manage your Windows 10 machines and your Mac machines in depth with the MDM solution. So how is the MDM solution available? Well, the MDM is available as a standalone product, which is present as both as an on-premise as well as a cloud service. We also have an MSP edition, a standalone MSP edition, which is now currently available as an on-premise and would soon to be released in the cloud as well. And at last, we have our integration with Desktop Central, which is our flagship product. So Desktop Central is a solution which is focused on managing your Windows, Mac, and Linux-based machines. So any machines that are running Windows 10, Windows 8, XP, Windows 7, everything can be managed by your Desktop Central. So it's an endpoint management solution, and the MDM along with it would gradually turn this solution into a UEM edition, or otherwise called as Unified Endpoint Management. So with the Desktop Central, you'd have complete opportunity to manage your mobile devices as well as your workstations as well as your server machines. So let's take a quick look into the integrations as we are talking about the key integration that we have with Desktop Central. The other integrations that we do support are integrations with your help desk portals like Service Spiceworks or Service Desk Plus. These are help desk portals that you can integrate with the product itself. So if you have any help desk technicians who would like to perform actions from those portals, they would be able to perform that as well. We also provide integrations with other applications like Zoho Creator or Zoho CRM in order to help you to distribute applications using the Zoho Creator application itself, or you can manage your customers using your Zoho CRM. And the other additional part that I'd like to say is we have a third-party API key integration as well. So these are the direct integrations that we support. You can also integrate your other products with the MDM if they are suited for it as well. And now for the architecture. So the MDM architecture is a pretty universal architecture that any solution would use. So we have three main components over here. One is the MDM service that is provided by us. Two would be the notification services that are hosted by your OEM vendor, like Apple push notification services for iOS, Firebase cloud messaging for Android, and your Windows notification services for your Windows machines. The third part would be the mobile devices that you would like to manage under your corporation. So let's see how the architecture itself works. Any command, I would say, it might be remoting into a machine, it might be pushing out application. Any commands originates from your MDM service. It contacts the notification server, which in turn wakes up the mobile device. The mobile device would then reach out to the MDM server, and then the connection would be completed. So since mobile devices are always on the go and they are connected to any third-party, network or Wi-Fi, open Wi-Fi's itself, you would have to expose your MDM server in case you are going for an on-premise solution. So at that particular instant, you'd have to expose the MDM server. So to protect the MDM server, we have provided an additional security component called as Secure Gateway. So what the Secure Gateway does is that it forwards the request from your mobile devices to the MDM server itself. Thereby, it prevents the MDM server from being exposed to the internet directly. And we can also integrate the Active Directory services with the MDM, be it an on-premise or cloud version of the MDM. You can integrate it with the Active Directory for device enrollment and provisioning systems. So we'll be talking about that today in the slides to come. Now for the ports used by Mobile Device Manager Plus. So the main port when it comes to your on-premise solution would be the 9383 port, because that is the port wherein the devices would communicate with the Mobile Device Manager Plus server. And then the other ports would be 443 and 5223 to 5230 for your iOS and Android devices itself. So it's more of your devices reaching out to the notification service and the Mobile Device Manager Plus server reaching out to your notification services itself. So these are outbound ports that you would have to cross-check and open in your server machine. If you're using the cloud version of the MDM, you guys can be happy because you guys don't have to worry about any ports. All the server maintenance, all the ports and upgrades as well, and security would be maintained by us on our cloud database centers itself. So now that we have talked a lot about managing the mobile devices, we see how actually in the present terms we manage these mobile devices. Here, first we would take Android as an example. So Android would use the MEMDM application to manage the mobile devices itself. But if you go for iOS, like Apple devices, Windows, or your Chromebooks, we would make use of the native client that is provided by the manufacturers itself. So the MDM does not require any applications to manage your iOS, Windows, or Chromebooks. We would directly go into the native client that is provided by the manufacturers, and then we would manage your mobile devices itself. So that would complete the overview of the Mobile Device Manager Plus product. Let me take you to the portal itself. So this is the portal wherein we'll be dealing with our training session today. This is the home tab wherein you have all these predefined details like platform summary, device type. So these are all interactive dashboard. As you can see, if you click on them, it would directly take you to those 4 devices itself. You then have your device management tab wherein you'd be performing a lot of activities, right from pushing out your configurations to applications to documents. Everything would be done from your device management tab. We'll be talking a little bit about the profiles and the configurations that you can deploy today, and more about app management and the other profiles in the next week's session. We then have our inventory tab wherein we keep a list of all the devices that are enrolled with the MDM solution. And if you click on the devices, you can actually see all the device details as well. You then have the enrollment tab, which we would be talking about a lot today. So device enrollment and device provisioning is the key topic for the day. So we'll be talking more about how you can onboard your devices into the MDM and apply certain basic configurations to them as well. Apart from this, we have our reports tab wherein you can generate reports and schedule them as well. You can also create your own custom reports if required. And at last, you have the admin tab, wherein as an administrator, you would have the ability to go ahead and make some changes to the portal itself. It can be device privacy or adding new technicians into the portal. And at last, you have the support tab, wherein we mention out all the resources and the how-to documents, and even the training videos that we are providing today would be updated here on a link. So all these details can be found under the MDM solution itself. Now, that being said, let us move into the first actual topic for the day, which would be enrolling your mobile devices. So let's start with devices that are already in use because, currently in the growing scenario and the growing, IT sector that we see today, more than the company buying corporate devices, they are now okay with managing the personal devices itself, or what we call them as BYOD, bring your own device to the office. So first, how can we manage them? Because they are personal devices, they have their own personal space and they would require a corporate space. So that's where this enrollment option would come into play for devices that are already in use, or in other terms, your personal devices. So first, there are two enrollment options available. One is enrollment with invites, and the second one is the self-enrollment option. So we discuss on both. So first, we see what are the benefits. So when you go for an enrollment, which is an enrollment via invite or a self-enrollment, you have the ability to isolate the corporate and the personal workspace. So a container would be created on the device and you can manage the applications only within that container. You can also encrypt it and make sure that none of the data is shared between the personal applications and the corporate applications. Again, so the next part is to prevent the unauthorized data access. So any third-party app cannot access the data that is within your container. And the last thing is that any application that is present inside the container cannot share its data to any of the personal cloud services that might be added to the device. So any Gmail accounts, iCloud accounts that have their G-Sync enable or the iCloud sync enable, it would not upload the documents to the respective cloud services itself. So we can prevent that and we can prevent the movement of your corporate data. So let's first start with enrollment via invites. So enrollment via invites is pretty simple. The admin sends an invite to the user. The user would then accept the invitation or that would be present on their email, would scan the QR code or access the enrollment URL if required, and then the device would get registered with the MDM solution. So let me show you where you can perform this particular task. You can go to enrollment. So here under enrollment and devices, you have the ability to click on enroll device. So based on what device it might be, you can choose the device, and then you have two options. If you as an administrator are going to enroll your own personal device, you can go for the by myself. But in this scenario, we are going to send out the invitation to one of our employees. So what we do in this case, as an administrator, you can either mention the username and the email address of that particular employee and then send out the enrollment invite. Or you can go for a domain user. So in this case is where you would integrate your Active Directory services with the MDM. So here you have the add domain button, which would take you to the Active Directory page. You can add the domain into the MDM itself, and then you can search for that particular user. So once you have obtained that user, you can then mention the tag, whether it's owned by the end user itself or whether the device is given by the corporate. So this is just a tag that we provide, and this would not, determine whether it's a corporate or a personal device. This is just a tag. Mostly, this tag would go into corporate if you are into, a company like mine, wherein they provide the devices to us, and we still use it like our own personal device. So that's where this tag would come into play. And next, you can assign the device to a particular group if required. So here you have the ability to assign the device to a group upon enrollment. What this does is that it automatically distributes your profiles or applications that you have assigned for the device. So once that is done, you can click on send enrollment invite, and automatically the user would get an invite on his or her screen. All they'd have to do, the invite would be something similar to this. So this is the same, details that would be sent out in your email as well. So if the end user opens their email, they'll find the similar steps along with the QR code mentioned out to them. All the end user has to do is to just scan this QR code and proceed with the enrollment itself. So I have a few screenshots from the mobile devices itself showing what happens on your device screen. So once the QR code is scanned, you'd get a prompt for the MDM profile installation on an iOS device. You then click on Allow, and the profile would be downloaded. Please note that following 12.0 update, iOS has stopped automatically installing the profile on your devices due to privacy terms and conditions that they always introduce, which is, I would say, a pretty important thing in these times right now that we live in. So once the profile is downloaded, you'd have to navigate to the settings, click on profile downloaded, and then install the profile itself. So once the profile is installed, your devices will now fall under the management system. So here under devices, you would find whether your device is enrolled, managed, or unmanaged itself. A few tips about sending out the invites. First, the invites are specific to the individual user and the device itself. So one user, so the same QR code cannot be used for multiple users. So that is one thing. And the second one would be if you're going for the OTP authentication method, then the OTP would expire in 7 days. So you'd have to make sure that your users are enrolling their devices within 7 days. Another option that you can use is the bulk enrollment option, wherein you'd have to upload a CSV file with all the usernames, the domain name, and the email addresses. So this would send out emails in a bulk rather than choosing one user at a time and then sending out enrollment requests to enroll their devices. You can go for a bulk invitation wherein we send out hundreds or thousands of mails if required and ask the users to enroll their devices into the MDM solution itself. So that is something that you can look into. The next phase would be your self-enrollment part. Self-enrollment is another key enrollment option under your BYOD scenario, but in order to use the self-enrollment itself, you'd have to integrate your Active Directory services. So that is a must when it comes to managing your devices or enrolling your devices using self-enrollment. So once the Active Directory is added over here, so we have this option, you click on Add Domain, we have the ability to add an on-premise AD, Azure, or a hybrid Azure AD as well. So once the domain is added over here, you can go down to self-enrollment and you can choose whether the self-enrollment link itself should work for all the AD groups or only selected AD groups alone. So you can browse through the AD and obtain the groups that are required. You can also notify the administrator when a device is enrolled through self-enrollment. So the best part about self-enrollment is you can just copy this URL and publish it in one of your forums that you would maintain in your company itself. So this is a link that is generated just for your service alone, and it's not user-based over here. This link can be accessed by any user on any device, and that would automatically display all the enrollment steps that are required for that user. And at the last, we would just ask them to provide their AD credentials in order to provision the device for them and enroll them with the MDM solution. The other part that we do is we also detect what platform the devices are when the self-enrollment URL is accessed. And when the device is enrolled, we will automatically map them to the respective groups if required. So when we map them to the respective groups, automatically the profiles and applications would be installed. So your devices would get enrolled, they would be added to a group. The group which has all the configurations and applications would automatically start deploying to your mobile devices itself. So it's a more automated cycle in this way when you have all these actions pre-configured. So let's see what happens on the mobile device end itself. So here under the self-enrollment option, this is an Android device that we are going for. So do remember that for an Android device, you need an MDM application to manage it. So we would ask the user to download the MDM app. Once that is done, all these details would be pre-configured in it. You would have to click on continue, and then the user would have to provide their username and password. So it would be their AD username and password. And once that is entered, you can click on continue and your devices would be successfully enrolled and managed by the MDM solution itself. So this is how the enrollment would work for your enrollment via invite devices or for your self-enrolled devices itself. The key point over here is that these enrollment tasks are always focused towards your BYOD devices. So if you have any questions regarding what we have discussed in this training right now, we have our chat panel and a chat expert who's waiting by to answer all your questions. So if you have any questions during any part of this training session itself, you can always raise it to us. And if you'd like some in-depth view of how each and every option can be performed based on your company scenario, we can also provide a free demo if required. So that being said, let's move into the next scenario is wherein you'd enroll your new devices. So enrolling new devices is a pretty mundane task is what I would say. You have to go through the initial setup of all the devices, and either the user or the admin intervention is required for enrollment in general cases. But what we have come by is the automated enrollment methods that are provided by the OEM vendors itself. So why not implement them in the MDM solution in order to make your lives a bit easy? So when it comes to iOS, Apple has provided a particular solution called as Apple Business Manager, and Android have provided a particular solution called as the Zero Touch Enrollment. So let's see what the benefits are. The first benefit is that you can silently install applications on the device itself. So since it's a corporate device, you can silently install an application on the device without the end user's intervention. Number two would be you can whitelist certain applications on the device alone, which means all the other applications can be completely blacklisted or removed from the device. The device home screen itself would only hold the 3 or 4 applications that you have whitelisted. Then you can also manage your OS updates. So what we have brought in is a feature called as automatic OS updates. So this would constantly check every day to check and see if there is an OS update available for the device or not. And this is something that is important because right now iOS 13 is going to be released. Apple has already started advertising it, and I'm getting a lot of notifications every day. So if you would like all your devices, iOS devices, to be upgraded to iOS 13.0, you can gladly go ahead and configure this particular option, and this would automatically update your OS in your iOS. The same option is available for your Android devices as well. And you also have the option to have full support over your profiles and configurations. Remember, BYOD devices are personal devices, so you can't take complete control and do whatever you'd like on the personal device itself. But if it's a corporate device and if the device is provided by the company, then you are the king. You can pretty much drill down so much that the end user would not have access even to their favorite applications. So all these profiles and configurations can be supported in your automated enrollment devices. So there are a few prerequisites that come along with this. The first prerequisite is to create an account with Apple or Google for your Apple Business Manager or your Android for Work service or your Zero Touch service. The next one would be to either purchase the devices directly from Apple or Google or from their authorized resellers. So they are pretty keen on that, and they would follow it up as well just to check and see if all your serial numbers are purchased from the right vendors. Let's take a look at the integration as to how the automated enrollment works. You'd have to integrate your Apple Business Manager or your Zero Touch portal with the MDM, and then you'd have to add your devices to that particular portal. So be it an Apple device or an Android device, you would have to add the device to the respective portals itself, and then you'd have to just sync them over to the MDM. So that would be all. And all you'd have to do now is to, if the devices are already boxed in, you can then distribute the devices and ask the users to just turn them on. Once they turn them on, the devices would automatically be registered with the MDM solution itself. So let's first look into how the Apple Business Manager solution works. So this is the MDM portal. You have the enrollment tab over here, and on the left, you have your Apple enrollment program. So it's either Apple Business Manager or your Apple School Manager solution that you can integrate with the MDM. So you'd have to download the public key from our service, and then you click on the option to sign into your respective ABM account. So once you sign into your ABM account and you have access to the ABM portal, you'd have to navigate to settings and then organization settings and click on add MDM server. So once you click on that particular option, you can provide a meaningful name to your MDM server and then upload the public key that you have downloaded from the MDM solution. So once the public key and the names are filled, you can click on save, and that would throw up an error like this. Not to worry, even if it's the first time that you're creating the MDM server, Apple would still throw an error message like this. You can ignore it and click on download server token. So once you have obtained the server token, you can then move back to the MDM console, click on next, navigate to upload server token page, upload the token over here, and then mention an email address as well. I would generally say use the support email address over here because this token has to be renewed every once a year. So any common IT admin account or that you guys might have in your company, you can mention that account details over here so that anyone who has access to the account can later, renew the token after a year. So once you click on upload, the next would be device activation setting. So first, we have an option wherein you can authenticate and auto-assign users based on device activation, which is nothing but your AD credentials itself. So once the devices are getting loaded up, we would ask for their Active Directory credentials, and we would automatically assign the device to that particular user itself. And the next option would be the fun one, is where you would skip all the configurations during a device setup. So be it an Android or an iOS device, you'd have to go through all the steps. I would say there are about 12 to 13 steps in the initial setup page itself. Would you like this? Would you like that? But here we have the ability to skip through all the steps and directly land on the home page itself. So this would be your MDM server itself after it has been integrated with the ABM service. So to show you the same page, I'd come down to enrollment, Apple enrollment over here, and I have a few devices waiting for user assignment, and you'd have the server option over here as well. So all these details would be available in your MDM solution. So once that is done, it's more of adding your devices into the solution. So here you'd again come back to your ABM portal, navigate to the settings tab, move over to organization setting, and then you'd have to provide your customer number or your Apple reseller ID. So the particular reseller from whom you have purchased the device from would have a reseller ID. So you'd have to mention the reseller ID and then proceed. So once that is done, your reseller would either upload all the devices onto the portal, or they would provide you with all the serial numbers in a CSV format or under an order number format. You can just choose either one of these three options, mention the particular details, and then you can go for choose action, wherein you'd have to assign the device to the MDM server so that when the device boots up, it would contact the Apple services. Apple service would say, hey, you are pointed to this particular MDM server, so I'm going to enroll you to the MDM server in place. So once that is done, your device assignment would be complete and your enrollment would be complete as well. So this is how your enrollment would look like on the mobile device screen itself. So you turn on the mobile device, you provide the Wi-Fi configuration. Automatically, this page would come up and the device would start configuring. So once that is done, you'd go back to the welcome page and then you would land on your home page itself. So it's that simple, and none of the other steps would be shown to the end user. Your devices are now under complete management, and you can find the devices under the same enrollment device panel. So here we mentioned, what enrollment type it is from. So here you have EMM token, your G Suite enrollment, or your Apple configurator enrollment, or your zero touch enrollment that we'd be talking about today. And we also have certain devices that are left for pending. So if you're not going for an option wherein you'd like to auto assign users based on Active Directory credentials that they provide, you can then manually assign the device to a particular user itself. So you can click on assign user over here. It's the same task once again. You can either assign it to a local user wherein you'd have to provide the username and the email address of that user. And I do have to warn you, the domain of this particular user would be MDM. It would not be your domain since you're adding it as a local user. But if you'd like the device to be attached to a domain, then you can click on domain user, choose the particular domain, and then choose the user as well. And then we would automatically assign it to a group, and you can also name the device. So when you name a device over here, it would change the device name on the physically on the device itself. So that's how you go about your assigning user option itself. And now for the zero touch enrollment, it's the same process, but the portal alone would be different. Here you'd have to access your zero touch portal. So all the shaded parts are your privacy details. It's our details, so we have just shaded them out over here. So here under the zero touch portal, you would go to the configuration tab, and then you would click on the plus symbol over here to create a new configuration. So when you click on create new configuration, you would obtain a page like this where you'd have to provide the configuration name, our MDM solutions name as well, and your company name and contact email address. You'd also have to copy a particular DPC token over here. So let me show you where you can obtain that token under the MDM solution. So each and every MDM service would have their own tokens. So over here under enrollment, zero touch enrollment, you would have this particular page come up over here. You click on the zero touch enrollment steps on the top right, and you would obtain the JSON data. So this JSON data has to be copied, and then it has to be pasted in your configuration page. Once it's pasted, you can apply, and then you can assign this particular configuration to the devices that you have added under the zero touch portal. So once you have added that, you can go ahead and start booting your devices itself. So your devices, upon turning them on and connecting to a Wi-Fi solution, automatically the end user would be forced to install the MDM application. The enrollment would be successful and the enrollment would be completed itself. So no initial steps, nothing. Automatically the devices would be enrolled and it would land on your enrollment screen over here. Followed by which you can then assign the user to the device and provide it to them and automatically assign them to a group if you'd require as well. So that would conclude the enrollment topic for today, wherein we have talked about enrolling your personal devices as well as certain enrollment options for your corporate devices. And the ones that are marked in green are the details that we have discussed today. We have missed out actually a lot of enrollment options like Apple Configurator, Knox, EMM token, NFC, your autopilot method for your Windows, which is almost similar to your ABM or your zero touch enrollment option itself. So there are multiple options and multiple enrollment options that we have still not discussed. So if you'd like to know more about these enrollments, I would urge you to sign up for a free demo with us. It would be probably for an hour or 45 minutes. We won't consume much of your time. We would personalize this demo for you, and you can then go ahead, trial out the product itself if you'd like. So next, we will talk about provisioning mobile devices in the MDM solution. So when it comes to provisioning your mobile devices, you would like to have certain basic configurations deployed to your devices itself. So the first set of configuration would always be the passcode policy, because you don't want a particular device to be left open in your service itself. So let's see how you can create a passcode policy for your device. You can navigate to the device management tab, profiles, and then click on create profile. So based on the flavor of OS that you're using for your mobile devices, you can choose and create a particular profile. So if it's going to be an Apple device, you can create an Apple profile, give it a meaningful name rather than my profile 1778, and then click on continue. The first page that you would land on would be your passcode page itself. So when it comes to your corporate devices, administrators have the ability to even prevent the users from setting any passcode on the device itself. So this can be a case wherein the particular iOS device is set up in, I would say, a reception, wherein the device should not be locked at any point of time. So that would be a scenario. But the main case over here is to set up a passcode in case you are going for a BYOD scenario or a corporate scenario as well, again. And we have the ability to force the user to set up a 6-digit, or if you want to give them a living hell, you can go for 10 digits as well, just to make sure that they don't set an easy passcode. You can also increase the number of special characters that are required. The maximum idle time before the device itself is auto lock. So all these options can be configured in your profile. You can save this profile, publish it, and then you can assign it to a group. So I was talking a lot about assigning profiles to groups, assigning applications to groups while we are talking about enrollment, because once the devices are enrolled and they are shipped over to a particular group over here, and you take, for example, you have associated a profile. So I've created an Apple profile now. This would be the one. If I click on select, automatically this profile would be applied to all the devices that are in the HR department group. So all your HR representatives would now have to configure a passcode policy on their device. And if they think that they can, go around it, they cannot, because we only provide them a maximum time of up to 60 minutes, after which Apple or your Android devices, we would force the user to set up a passcode on their device. So your HR representatives would have to set up a passcode on their devices itself. Apart from that, we also we would suggest you to go for other provisioning profiles. So here under the profiles itself, I think I have created a profile for you guys that I'd like to show today. Let me bring that up one moment. So it would be the provisioning device profile. I click on modify. So any profile that you create can be modified as well. And when I click on continue, I have all these options set. First, we had talked about passcode. So the user is forced to set up a passcode on the device. Automatically, the device can get connected to a corporate network. So you can ensure that without providing the password for a Wi-Fi service to your end, consumers itself or employees, you can automatically set up a Wi-Fi service on their devices. So this would automatically configure the Wi-Fi on their devices. And then after that, if you know that certain devices are going to go outside of your network, roam around, and you have planned to deploy certain in-house applications over to them. In that case, for the application to talk to the application server, we can establish a VPN connection. So based on whether you are going for an L2TP connection or a custom VPN option, all the configurations can be supported. So here we have all the VPNs that we support. If you're going for custom SSL VPN, you can go for that as well. So this profile or this VPN would be applied for your entire device. So all the device communication would happen through the VPN if it's turned on. And we can make a small tweak to that as well, wherein we can allow the VPN to be accessed only if particular applications like Zoho CRM or Zoho Books are opened. So the VPN is connected only when these applications are selected or running on the mobile device itself. So that is the option of per app VPN. Then you have Exchange Active Sync. So here we have the ability to automatically configure the email services in your mobile devices. So be it an Office 365 or an Exchange on-premise solution, you can just mention the details and automatically, if you have integrated the AD with the MDM, we will start pulling your domain name and the username from your AD itself. So the end user on their mobile devices would only have to provide the password, and that would automatically set up the email services in their mobile devices. And then we have manage web domains, wherein if take for example, you are providing www.wikipedia.com over here. So any document that is downloaded from Wikipedia can only be opened by the applications that are managed by MDM. So no other applications can have access to a document. So if it's going to be one of your internal sites that you have hosted and you have certain key sales documents over there, then even if those documents are downloaded, they cannot be accessed by third-party applications. They can only be accessed by the apps that are distributed through the MDM solution. And the last option would be your enterprise single sign-on, wherein you can sign in to all the applications using a common username and a password itself. So with just one username and password, if the end user provides to one application, it would be used in all the applications for signing in. But you'd have to make sure that you have integrated your Active Directory services with us and the Kerberos is enabled in your Active Directory system. So once that is enabled, you can start using your enterprise single sign-on with the MDM solution itself. So this is just the basic set of configurations that I'd like to discuss with you guys today, wherein you can deploy it to your devices upon enrollment itself. In next week's session and the week after, we'll be talking more about what you can find under restrictions, what you can find under Mac restrictions, kiosk, web content filter for your Android devices, for your Windows devices, etc. So all those would be dealt with in the next week's and the coming week's session itself. So now we have talked a lot about enrolling devices and then pushing out basic configurations to your devices. But we are doing each and every one of these steps that I've just mentioned in order to secure the corporate data on your, mainly, I would say, on your personal devices. So when it comes to enrolling your personal devices, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of scenarios wherein your data can be breached. First and foremost would be sharing of data through AirDrop, through Wi-Fi, through your Bluetooth, or even through the Google communication option that is provided right now. I'm not really sure of the terminology, but they have also brought in Android Beam. Yes, how can I forget that? So Android Beam, so all these files and documents can be shared in an instant to all of your devices over there. So that is one way where the data breach can happen. Another way is where you just upload all of the files to your G Drive or your Dropbox, and you have all the corporate data scrambled and present in multiple solutions, and then is between the applications itself. So in any corporate scenario, if the device is not managed, this is something that you guys would face from time to time. You guys would send an email, and the end user or the employee would download the document and share it via Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, which is certainly not the way to do it. So that's where we bring in our containerization, wherein we separate your corporate space from the personal space itself. No communication whatsoever between your corporate applications and the personal applications. So if you take the containerization on an Android device, upon enrollment, Google, the good guy, has actually created a container on the mobile device itself, thereby encrypting all of your corporate applications. So all of your corporate applications would have an orange badge over here, and all those applications are encrypted and within a container itself. But if you take an iOS device, I would say there aren't a lot of containerization created because Apple is an encrypted device by default. It's not an unencrypted open device like your Android devices. So in the case you are not applying any profiles, what happens in an iOS device is that the same scenario that I have discussed a few minutes back. You send an email, the end user would be able to share the email over AirDrop or upload it to Dropbox or any other third-party application, or then open it with your corporate apps. What you would like to do is to force them to open only with the corporate applications itself. So in that case, for your iOS personal devices alone, you would create a profile. You would navigate to the restrictions tab over here, security, and then you would prevent the sharing of data between your managed apps and unmanaged apps, and also between the unmanaged apps to your managed apps, vice versa, from to from. So this would eventually create a virtual container around your corporate applications, preventing them to share the documents from one application over to the other application itself. And most of you iOS users out there, you guys would already know that iOS themselves have a lot of app wrapping available, wherein most of the applications would not have access to the other applications, documents or photos. So we have just added another layer of configuration around it just to make sure to create a virtual containerization to prevent sharing of corporate data between your personal and corporate applications. So once this particular profile is saved, published, and distributed, your devices, after containerization or after the profile has been deployed, would look like this. When the user clicks on the particular document that has been found in the email services itself, do note that the email service is also added by the MDM solution. At that point of time, this particular document can only be opened by the corporate applications. So it can either be opened by the MDM app, which has a local reader in it, or by any Microsoft Office applications that are available over here. And now for the last part, which is to secure your corporate emails from unauthorized access. So this is a cumbersome task that most of the IT admins have to perform these days. I've seen a lot of scenarios wherein IT administrators have to personally go into the OWA portal, look for all the EAS identifiers, block certain devices, and allow a few devices alone. So that is the most troublesome task that an IT administrator has to go through because take, for example, an employee like me comes into the office. I have three phones with me. So I would sign into the account on all the three phones. I don't know if there is, sorry, the admin would not know if my phone is containerized or not, if the emails are being shared around, etc. So that's where the conditional exchange access would come into play. Rather than going into the OWA blocking each and every device, you can just simply integrate your Exchange Active service with the MDM. Once it's integrated, you can enforce a conditional policy to all your accounts. And what happens over here is that only the devices that are managed by the MDM solution would have access to the Exchange services. So let's discuss in deep about this. So this would be the first page. So under device management, you have conditional exchange access. And based on whether you're using Office 365 or Exchange on-premise, you can choose the options and then configure the same. You'd have to provide your username and password. It has to be the admin credentials for your Office 365 or your Exchange on-premise solution. So once you have provided that, we would have integrated with the solution itself and you'd have synced in all your mailboxes. And now you'd have to configure an access policy. So once you click on configure, you can now set this policy either for all your users or only a selected number of users alone. And if you don't want to mess around with the top level management people, you can exclude those users from here as well so that they can access their mail services from any device that they like. You can also allow your end users a grace period of 3 days or 2 days wherein we would send them an email stating them or asking them to enroll their devices into the MDM solution. So that's why we generally, request you to integrate your Active Directory services as we would provide your self-enrollment URL over here. So if we did, check and see that there is a particular mobile device that has not been enrolled with the MDM solution, having your corporate email configuration in there, we would automatically trigger an email to the end user itself, asking them to enroll that particular mobile device with the MDM. We would wait for 2 days and see if they are enrolling their device. Else, on the third day, we would block their personal device from accessing your Exchange on-premise solution. So the MDM service would kind of act like a firewall. It would check and see if these particular, identifiers or devices are enrolled. If it's enrolled, it would allow them to have access to your email services. If it's not enrolled, then it would not allow them to have access to their mail services itself. So once you click on apply policy, the policy would be applied and we would identify the devices based on something called as your EAS identifier or nothing but your Exchange Active Sync identifier. So based on that, if this identifier is found within the MDM, it would have access to your email services. If it's not, it would be blocked by the MDM solution itself. So that would bring us to probably the last section of the free training itself, which would be your scenarios and solution. The first scenario is, can we enroll devices not purchased from authorized resellers into Apple Business Manager? Well, yes, that is a huge question that was asked before. So Apple had actually brought in an option starting from iOS 11.0. So that would make, or that would be using a particular software called your Apple Configurator solution. So here is the Apple Configurator solution, wherein you'd have to add the devices to the ABM solution through this particular service. So I have actually remoted into a Mac machine right now. So let me show you how you can create a configuration like this. So this would be your Apple configurator solution. I have connected my device. So I have to first create a new blueprint for this. So if I click on new, I would create a new blueprint, and then I would have to prepare the blueprint to be added. So what I would do over here is I would choose this particular option to add the device to the device enrollment program. So once I have selected this option and I go forward with the next steps, it would then ask me to provide my Apple Business Manager account credentials. So once I have provided that credentials, all I'd have to do is to then save this particular blueprint, click on done over here, and if I've connected a particular device that needs to be added to the ABM, you'd have to right click on it and then apply the blueprint that you have just created. So this would prepare the device and add it to the ABM solution itself. And though your devices are not purchased from Apple directly or from an authorized reseller, you can still add it to your ABM solution. Next would be scenario 2. In most cases, people would like to leverage on the benefits of zero-touch enrollment, but some of the devices are not supported as of now because the zero-touch enrollment was introduced by Android or by Google only from Android 7.0 and 8.0 devices. So any devices in 6.0 or 5.0 cannot be enrolled using your zero-touch enrollment. So in order to enroll them, we have an option called as your EMM token enrollment. So EMM token enrollment can be found under enrollment over here, EMM token enrollment. And here we would provide the steps as to how you can enroll your devices. You can specify a particular token, the DPC token, which is AFW #MEMDM on the device during the device startup itself. So this is not a complete automated way, but when you set up the device, you'd have to provide this token as the Gmail account, like you see on the screen over here. If you click on next, automatically the MDM application would be downloaded and your device would be configured. You'd have to click on scan QR code over here and then scan the QR code that is mentioned in your screen itself in your MDM console. Once you have scanned the QR code, the device would land in such a page like this, or you can find it under devices staged area, wherein you can then assign a user to the device itself. So that would automatically complete your enrollment task on your device. Scenario 3. What would happen when two contradictory profiles are applied to a device? So that's a good question. Over here, what happens is, take for example, let me show it to you guys itself. That would be a more better way, what I feel. So I'd go to profiles, I click Apple profile, for example. Let me start with Apple. I click on continue, I go for restrictions, and for the first profile, I restrict camera. I save the profile, I publish it, and I distribute it to a particular device. The camera cannot be accessed on the device itself. So I'm creating another profile wherein I am allowing the camera. I'm now saving, publishing, and then distributing this profile to the device. So what iOS would do is it would take both the profiles and see which one is more secure. Profile number 1 has the option wherein camera is blocked. So according to the Apple OS, that is the most secure option. So the camera would still be restricted on the device itself. The camera would remain restricted on your mobile devices. But in the case of Android, so when you come down to profiles, you create a profile for your Android device, for example. Here, when you go to restrictions, you restrict the same option, camera. What happens over here is that for profile 1, you are restricting camera. The device now cannot access the camera itself. But in profile 2, you are going to allow the camera option. So what Android OS does in this case is that it would accept the latest profile that has been applied to it. So the camera at the end would be allowed on your mobile devices. So that's how the OS would work or I would say the different flavors of OS would work when two contradictory profiles are applied to a device. Fourth scenario would be how can we ensure the users connect only to the Wi-Fi distributed using the MDM solution? That is possible as well. Here under profiles, let me open the provisioning profile itself since I've already have a Wi-Fi configured on it. So I click on modify. Now I'd like to force my users to set up or to connect their device only to this particular Wi-Fi alone. Then all I have to do now is to just enable one restriction over here. So I'd come down to restrictions, network and roaming, and then connect to Wi-Fi only if distributed via MDM. I click on yes. We would throw a huge error or a warning symbol because this means that your devices cannot be connected to any other Wi-Fi service. They can be connected to mobile data, but they cannot be connected to any other Wi-Fi service. So if you're not provided the proper credentials, then the device might lose contact to your MDM server itself. So that is a restriction that you can place on your devices. And this option is again available in your Android devices as well. And scenario 5 is where how can we prevent sensitive corporate content from being displayed on your device lock screen? That can be done as well. Here under your iOS, you have your restrictions option, and then you can restrict your notification. Or under profiles, we have, let's say, for Android, since there'd be a lot of Android users out there, and I've not talked more about Android today. Let me go into restrictions over here. I have security and the lock screen preference. So I go and hide sensitive data or don't show any notification at all. So I'd go for hide sensitive content because the employee would know that some notification is triggered in a particular application, and they would then have to open their device and manually go into the application itself in order to check that. So like that, we have a lot of functionalities and restrictions available, which we would be talking more about in the next week's session. So this brings us to the end of today's training. I hope you guys have learned a lot from today's free training, and do rate us on a scale from 1 to 5, where 5 is the best. You can also share some love over the media sites over here. You can just use the hashtag over there and encourage us a lot more to do a lot of free trainings for you guys, to bring in a lot of cases and scenarios to discuss on this free training itself. So the next training is scheduled for September 12th. Same time, you have app management and device security. Thank you guys and have a great day. Do rate us. Thank you.